You are watching part 2 of a 2-part series on Spygate. As Steele's media meetings were going on, FBI General Counsel James Baker learned that Perkins' Coie partner Michael Sussman was also speaking with reporters from the New York Times regarding the Alpha Bank information that Sussman had provided to the FBI. After some internal discussions, the FBI approached both Sussman and the New York Times, asking that any story be held until the FBI had time to complete an investigation into the documents provided by Sussman. It appears that an agreement was reached, and the FBI began to look into the claims regarding Alpha Bank and the server at Trump Tower. But Sussman wasn't the only one that Baker, currently the subject of an ongoing criminal leak investigation, was speaking with. According to congressional investigators, beginning sometime in September 2016, Baker began having conversations with his old friend and journalist, David Corn of Mother Jones. According to Baker, these conversations were in relation to ongoing FBI matters. Jordan, did you talk to Mr. Corn prior to the election about anything related to FBI matters? Not, so we're not going to ask about the Steele dossier. Anything about FBI business, FBI matters? Mr. Baker, yes. Jordan, yes. And do you know, can you give me some dates or the number of times that you talked to Mr. Corn about FBI matters leading up to the 2016 presidential election? Mr. Baker, I don't remember, Congressman. By October 31st of 2016, the FBI had apparently wrapped up their investigation into the Alpha Bank allegations, finding no evidence of anything untoward in the process. It was on this day that 3 separate articles on Alpha Bank would be published. The first, Investigating Donald Trump, FBI sees no clear link to Russia, by the New York Times, appears to be an updated version of the article they had intended to publish before the FBI asked them to delay their reporting. It stated the following. In classified sessions in August and September, intelligence officials also briefed congressional leaders on the possibility of financial ties between Russians and people connected to Mr. Trump. They focused particular attention on what cyber experts said appeared to be a mysterious computer back channel between the Trump Organization and the Alpha Bank, which is one of Russia's biggest banks and whose owners have long-standing ties to Mr. Putin. The reference to classified sessions in August and September is likely in relation to the series of Gang of 8 briefings that former CIA Director John Brennan engaged in at that time, including his briefings to then Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid. The article continued. FBI officials spent weeks examining computer data showing an odd stream of activity to a Trump Organization server and Alpha Bank. Computer logs obtained by the New York Times show that 2 servers at Alpha Bank sent more than 2,700 lookup messages, a first step for one system's computers to talk to another, to a Trump-connected server beginning in the spring. But the FBI ultimately concluded that there could be an innocuous explanation, like a marketing email or spam for the computer contacts. The second article, published on October 31st, 2016 by Slate magazine, was solely focused on the allegations regarding a server in the Trump Tower that had allegedly been communicating with a server at Alpha Bank in Russia. Immediately following the publication of the Slate article, Hillary Clinton sent a tweet that included a statement from Jake Sullivan, a senior policy advisor. Computer scientists have apparently uncovered a covert server linking the Trump Organization to a Russian-based bank. Sullivan's statement referenced the Slate article and included the following. This could be the most direct link yet between Donald Trump and Moscow. Computer scientists have apparently uncovered a covert server linking the Trump Organization to a Russian-based bank. This secret hotline may be the key to unlocking the mystery of Trump's ties to Russia. It certainly seems the Trump Organization felt it had something to hide, given that it apparently took steps to conceal the link when it was discovered by journalists. The Alpha Bank story took off, despite the same-day story from the New York Times that specifically noted the FBI had investigated that matter and found nothing untoward. The final article, published on October 31st, a veteran spy has given the FBI information alleging a Russian operation to cultivate Donald Trump by Mother Jones reporter David Corn, also mentioned Alpha Bank. In recent weeks, reporters in Washington have pursued anonymous online reports that a computer server related to the Trump Organization engaged in a high level of activity with servers connected to Alfa Bank, the largest private bank in Russia. On Monday, a Slate investigation detailed the pattern of unusual server activity, but concluded we don't yet know what this Trump server was for, but it deserves further explanation. In an email to Mother Jones, Hope Hicks, a Trump campaign spokeswoman, maintains the Trump Organization is not sending or receiving any communications from this email server. The Trump Organization has no communication or relationship with this entity or any Russian entity. More notably, Korn's article also provided the first public reporting on the existence of the Steele dossier. A former senior intelligence officer for a Western country who specialized in Russian counterintelligence tells Mother Jones that in recent months he provided the Bureau with memos based on his recent interactions with Russian sources, contending the Russian government has for years tried to co-opt and assist Trump, and that the FBI requested more information from him. As it turns out, Korn had detailed first-hand knowledge of the dossier. According to testimony from Baker, Korn had been provided parts of the dossier by Fusion GPS head Glenn Simpson. Baker knew of this fact because within a week of publishing his article, Korn passed these dossier parts on to Baker personally. Jordan. Prior to the election, Mr. Korn had a copy of the dossier and was talking to you about giving that to you so the FBI would have it. Is that all right? I mean, all accurate? Mr. Baker, my recollection is that he had part of the dossier, that we had other parts already, and that we still got other parts from other people, and nevertheless, some of the parts that David Korn gave us were parts that we did not have from another source. Steele had written 4 memos after the FBI team received his information in mid-September. All of the memos were written in October, on the 12th, 18th, 19th and 20th. Baker testified that he received elements of the dossier from Korn that were not in the FBI's possession at the time. He said that he immediately turned this information over to leadership within the FBI, noting, "I think it was Bill Priestap, the head of the FBI's counterintelligence division." The use of personal relationships as a mechanism to transmit outside information to the FBI was actually noted by Baker, who said of Korn, "Even though he was my friend, I was also an FBI official. He knew that, and so he wanted to somehow get that into the hands of the FBI." Steele was terminated as a source by the FBI on November 1, 2016, for communicating with the media. Despite this, DOJ official Bruce Orr and Steele communicated regularly for another full year until November 2017. On November 21, 2016, Orr had a meeting with FBI agent Peter Strzok and FBI lawyer Lisa Page and was introduced to FBI agent Joe Pienka, who became Orr's FBI handler. Pienka was also present with Strzok during the January 24, 2017 interview of President Trump's National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. The next day, on November 22, 2016, Orr met alone with Pienka. Orr would continue to relay his communications with Steele to the FBI through Pienka, who then recorded them in FD 302 forms. What Orr didn't know was that Pienka was transmitting all the information directly to Strzok. Orr, in his testimony, detailed his interactions with Steele and Simpson, as well as his communications with officials at the FBI and DOJ. Notably, Orr repeatedly stated that he never vetted any of the information provided by either Steele or Simpson. He simply turned it over or relayed it to the FBI, usually to Pienka, but Orr also testified that at least on 2 occasions I was handed on to a new agent. Sometime in late 2016, his wife Nellie Orr provided him with a memory stick containing all of her research that she had compiled while employed at Fusion GPS. Bruce Orr testified he gave the memory stick to Pienka. Nellie Orr had left Fusion in September 2016. Through Pienka, Strzok now had all of Nellie Orr's Fusion research in his possession. On December 10, 2016, Orr met with Simpson, who gave him a memory stick that Orr believed contained a copy of the Steele dossier. Orr also passed the second memory stick along to Pienka. On January 20th, 2017, Orr had one final contact with Simpson, a phone call that took place on the same day as the Trump's inauguration. Orr testified that Fusion GPS co-founder Glenn Simpson was concerned that one of Steele's sources was about to be exposed through the pending publication of an article. Mr. Orr, he says something along the lines of, there's going to be some reporting in the next few days that's could expose the source, and the source could be in personal danger. Meadows, and why was he concerned about that source being exposed? Mr. Orr, I think that he was aware of some kind of article that was likely to come out in the next, few days or something. Apparently, Simpson's information was at least partly accurate. On January 24, 2017, the Wall Street Journal reported that Sergey Millen was both Source D and Source E in the dossier. It remains unknown exactly how Simpson knew in advance that Millen would be outed as a source. But there are some questions as to the accuracy of the journal's reporting. The dossier appears to conflict with the journal's article in at least one respect. According to the dossier, Source E was used as confirmation for source, meaning they cannot be the same person. Suspicions exist that Russian singer Emin Agalarov might be a more logical candidate as Source D. Additionally, Felix Sater remains a realistic possibility as Source E. Simpson and Steele were carefully thorough in their dissemination efforts. The dossier had been fed into US channels through several different sources. One such source was Sir Andrew Wood, the former British ambassador to Russia who had been briefed about the dossier by Steele. Wood may also have worked on behalf of Steele's company Orbis Business Intelligence. He was referenced in a court filing as an Orbis associate. Wood later relayed information regarding the dossier to Senator John McCain during a meeting at the Halifax International Security Forum in November 2016. McCain then dispatched his long-term aide David Kramer to London to meet with Steele on November 28, 2016. Kramer reviewed all the memos during his London meeting with Steele. Upon his return, Kramer was provided a copy of the dossier, which at that point consisted of 16 memos from Simpson. According to details contained within a BuzzFeed court ruling, Kramer, McCain and Christopher Brose, McCain's chief of staff, met to review the dossier on November 30, 2016. Kramer advised McCain to share the reports with the FBI and CIA. McCain later passed a copy of the dossier to Comey on December 9, 2016. It isn't known if McCain also provided a copy to then CIA Director John Brennan. Notably, Brennan did attach a 2-page summary of the dossier to the intelligence community assessment that he delivered to outgoing President Barack Obama on January 5, 2017. Several days after McCain, Brose and Kramer met to discuss the dossier, the court ruling notes that McCain instructed Kramer to meet with Assistant Secretary of State for Europe and Eurasian Affairs Victoria Nuland and Senior Director for Russian Affairs at the National Security Council Celeste Wallander, spelled incorrectly as Wallander in the court document. The purpose of the meeting was to verify if the dossier was being taken seriously. Both Nuland and Wallander were previously aware of the dossier's existence, and both officials previously knew Steele, whom they believed to be credible. Kramer didn't physically share the dossier with them. Another notable disclosure from the BuzzFeed court ruling revealed that Kramer showed a copy of the dossier to BuzzFeed News reporter Ken Bingsinger on December 29, 2016, during a meeting at the McCain Institute. Court documents show that Kramer told Bingsinger that some of the information was unverified. Bingsinger left the meeting at the McCain Institute with copies of all 17 memos, including a newly written December 13th memo that referenced Trump lawyer Michael Cohen. According to UK court documents, Kramer, on behalf of McCain, asked Steele to provide any further intelligence that he had gathered relating to alleged Russian interference in the US presidential election. It was this request from McCain that led Steele to produce his December 13th memo. McCain famously denied ever providing a copy of the dossier to BuzzFeed, telling the Daily Caller, "I gave it to no one except for the director of the FBI. I don't know why you're digging this up now." Although the court ruling doesn't reference whether McCain directed Kramer to provide the dossier to BuzzFeed, it would seem unlikely that Kramer would take that action upon himself, particularly with his knowledge that McCain provided then FBI Director James Comey a copy of the dossier just over a week prior. There is apparently some dispute as to how Bingsinger obtained physical possession of the dossier. A footnote within the court document notes that there is disagreement between Kramer and Bensinger about whether Kramer gave Bensinger a copy or whether Bensinger took photos of the dossier when Kramer was not looking. Kramer testified that Bensinger took photos of the dossier when Kramer was out of the room, even though he asked Bensinger not to. However, the court ruling also notes that in a later declaration, Kramer stated that he had no objection to Bensinger taking a hard copy and had provided hard copies to other journalists. By late December, certain members of the media, including Jake Tapper of CNN, had obtained copies of the dossier. A short sequence describes what happened next. The Intelligence Community Assessment (ICA) on alleged Russian hacking was released internally on January 5, 2017. On this same day, outgoing President Obama held an undisclosed White House meeting to discuss the ICA and the attached summation of the dossier with National Security Advisor Susan Rice, FBI Director James Comey, and Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates. Rice would later send herself an email documenting the meeting. The following day, CIA Director John Brennan, Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, and Comey attached a written summary of the Steele dossier to the classified briefing they gave Obama. Comey then met with President-elect Trump to inform him of the dossier. This meeting took place just hours after Comey, Brennan, and Clapper formally briefed Obama on both the intelligence community assessment and the Steele dossier. Comey would only inform Trump of the salacious details contained within the dossier. He later explained on CNN in an April 2018 interview that he had done so at the request of Clapper and Brennan. Shortly after Comey's meeting with Trump, both the Trump-Comey meeting and the existence of the dossier were leaked to CNN. The significance of the meeting was material, as Comey noted in a January 7th memo. Media, like CNN, had them and were looking for a news hook. I said it was important that we not give them the excuse to write that the FBI has the material. The media has widely dismissed the dossier as unsubstantiated and therefore unreportable. It was only after learning that Comey briefed Trump on it that CNN reported on the dossier. The House Intelligence Committee report on Russian election interference confirmed that Clapper personally leaked confirmation of the dossier along with Comey's meeting with Trump to CNN. The committee's investigation revealed that President-elect Trump was indeed briefed on the contents of the Steele dossier, and when questioned by the committee, former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper admitted that he confirmed the existence of the dossier to the media. Additionally, the House Intelligence report shows Clapper appears to have been the direct source for CNN's Jake Tapper and his January 10th story, which disclosed the existence of the dossier. When initially asked about the leaks related to the ICA in July of 2017, former DNI Clapper flatly denied discussing the dossier compiled by Steele or any other intelligence related to Russia hacking of the 2016 election with journalists. Clapper subsequently acknowledged discussing the dossier with CNN journalist Jake Tapper and admitted that he might have spoken with other journalists about the same topic. Clapper's discussion with Tapper took place in early January of 2017, around the time IC leaders briefed President Obama and President-elect Trump on the Christopher Steele information, a two-page summary of which was enclosed in the highly classified version of the ICA. On January 10, 2017, CNN published an article. Intel chiefs presented Trump with claims of Russian efforts to compromise him by Evan Perez, Jim Shikuto, Jake Tapper, and Carl Bernstein. This article would later be updated and have a January 12, 2017 date. The allegations within the dossier were made public, and with reporting of the briefings by intelligence community leaders, instant credibility was given to the dossier's assertions. Immediately following the CNN story, BuzzFeed published the Steele dossier, and the Trump-Russia conspiracy was pushed into the mainstream. The following day, January 11, 2017, Clapper issued a statement condemning the leaks that he had personally engaged in, and by doing so, acknowledged that he too had now briefed President President-elect Trump on the Steele dossier. On November 17, 2016, Clapper submitted his resignation as Director of National Intelligence. His resignation became effective on January 20, 2017. In August 2017, CNN hired Clapper as their national security analyst. Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, then National Security Advisor to President Donald Trump, was interviewed on January 24, 2017 by FBI agents Peter Strzok and Joe Pienka about two December 2016 conversations that Flynn had had with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. Details of the phone conversation had leaked to the media. Flynn ultimately pleaded guilty to one count of lying to the FBI regarding his conversation with Kislyak. It remains unknown to this day who leaked Flynn's classified call, a far more serious felony violation. The Washington Post reported in January 2017 that the FBI had found no evidence of wrongdoing in Flynn's actual call with the Russian ambassador. The call and the matters discussed in it broke no laws. Flynn has been portrayed in the media as being suspiciously close to Russia. Frequently cited as evidence is a dinner in Moscow that occurred in late 2015. On December 10, 2015, Flynn attended an event in Moscow to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Russian television network RT. Flynn, who was seated next to Russian President Vladimir Putin for the culminating dinner, was also interviewed on national security matters by an RT correspondent. Flynn's Speakers Bureau, Leading Authorities Inc., was paid $45,000 for the event, and Flynn received $33,000 of the total amount. Seated at the same table with Flynn was Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate in the 2016 election. By all accounts, including Stein's, Flynn and Putin didn't engage in any real conversation. At the time, Flynn's trip didn't garner significant attention, but it would later be used by media and the Clinton campaign to push the Russian collusion narrative. Notably, as stated by his lawyer Robert Kellner, Flynn disclosed his Moscow trip to the Defense Intelligence Agency before he traveled there and provided a full briefing upon his return. As has previously been reported, General Flynn briefed the Defense Intelligence Agency, a component agency of the DoD, extensively regarding the RT speaking event trip, both before and after the trip, and he answered any questions that were posed by the DIA concerning the trip during those briefings. Flynn's trip to Russia was first brought to broader attention on July 18th of 2016, during a live interview at the Republican National Convention with Yahoo News reporter Michael Isikoff. The Isikoff interview took place on July 18, 2016. Unknown at the time, the matter had also captured the attention of Christopher Steele, who had begun publishing his dossier memos on June 20, 2016. Contained within an August 10, 2016 memo was the initial reference to Flynn. Kremlin engaging with several high-profile US players, including Stein, Page, and former DIA Director Michael Flynn, and funding their recent visits to Moscow. In addition to the obvious questions raised by the timing of Flynn's name appearing in Steele's August 10th memo is the manner in which Flynn is denoted. All other names are capitalized in the manner of intelligence briefings, and in one case appears within parentheses. Steele met with Yahoo News' Isikoff in September of 2016 and gave him information from the dossier. The resulting September 23, 2016 article from Isikoff was then cited by the FBI as validating Steele's claims and was featured in both the original FISA application and its 3 subsequent renewals on Trump campaign foreign policy advisor Carter Page. Steele wasn't the only person Isikoff was working with. On August 26, 2016, Isikoff published a story on Yahoo News about Paul Manafort's business dealings with Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska. It was later learned from a Democratic National Committee DNC email leaked by WikiLeaks that Isikoff had been working with Alexandra Chalupa, a Ukrainian-American operative who was doing consulting work for the DNC. Chalupa met with top officials in the Ukrainian embassy in Washington in an effort to expose alleged ties between Trump, Manafort, and Russia. The obvious question remains, how did the information on Flynn make its way into the dossier at the time it did, and who provided the information to Steele? Flynn's 2015 dinner in Moscow was initially used to implicate the Trump campaign's ties to Russia. It was then used as a means to cast doubt on Flynn's ability as Trump's national security advisor. Following Flynn's resignation, it was then used as a means to pursue the ongoing collusion narrative that gained full strength in the early days of the Trump administration. A January 10, 2017 article in the New York Times, Trump's national security pick sees ally in fight against Islamists. Russia highlighted the efforts. In an extraordinary report released last week, the agencies bluntly accused the Russian government of having worked to undermine American democracy and promote the candidacy of Mr. Trump. The report is likely to renew questions about Mr. Flynn's avowed eagerness to work with Russia and his dismissal of concerns about President Vladimir V. Putin. Flynn would resign from his position as National Security Advisor in February 2017. The sequence of events leading to his resignation were both coordinated and orchestrated, with Acting Attorney General Sally Yates playing a leading role. In January 12, 2017, Flynn's December 29, 2016 call with Ambassador Kislyak was leaked to the Washington Post. The article portrayed Flynn as undermining Obama's Russia sanctions that had been imposed on the same day as Flynn's call with the Russian ambassador. On January 15th, Vice President Mike Pence appeared on Face the Nation to defend Flynn's calls 5 days before Trump's inauguration. A few days later, on January 19th, the day before Trump's inauguration, Obama officials Yates, Clapper, Brennan and Comey met to discuss Flynn's situation. The concern they reportedly discussed was that Flynn might have misled Trump administration officials regarding the nature of his call with Kislyak. Yates, Clapper and Brennan supported informing the Trump administration of their concerns. Comey took a dissenting view. On January 23rd, Yates again pressured Comey, telling the FBI director she believed Flynn could be vulnerable to blackmail attempts. At this point, according to media reports, Comey relented, despite the FBI finding nothing unlawful in the content of Flynn's calls. Strzok and Pienka, at the instruction of McCabe, interviewed Flynn the following day. According to court documents, McCabe and other FBI officials decided the agents would not warn Flynn that it was a crime to lie during an FBI interview because they wanted Flynn to be relaxed. It was during this interview that Flynn reportedly lied to the FBI. The DOJ was provided a detailed briefing of the Flynn interview on the following day. On January 26th, Yates contacted White House counsel Don McGahn, who agreed to meet to discuss the matter. Yates arrived at McGahn's office, bringing Mary McCord, John Cullen's acting replacement as head of the DOJ's National Security Division. Yates later testified before Congress that the meeting surrounded Flynn's phone calls and his FBI interview. She also testified that Flynn's calls and subsequent interview was a topic of a whole lot of discussion in DOJ and with other members of the intel community. McGahn reportedly asked Yates, "Why does it matter to the DOJ if one White House official lies to another official?" McGahn called Yates the following day and asked her to return for a second meeting. Yates returned to the White House without McCord. McGahn asked to examine the FBI's evidence on Flynn. Yates said she would respond by the following Monday. Yates failed to provide McGahn with the FBI's evidence on Flynn. From that point, the pressure on Flynn and the Trump administration escalated, with help from media reporting. Flynn resigned on February 13th, and after it was reported that he had misled Pence about phone conversations he'd had with Kislyak. The following day, the New York Times reported that phone records and intercepted calls show that members of Donald J. Trump's 2016 presidential campaign and other Trump associates had repeated contacts with senior Russian intelligence officials in the year before the election, according to 4 current and former American officials. With Flynn gone and the Russian narrative firmly established, the conspirators then turned their attention to Trump's newly confirmed Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. On March 1, 2017, the Washington Post reported that Sessions had twice had contact with Russian Ambassador Kislyak. The following day, March 2nd, Sessions recused himself from the Russia investigation. On the same day that Sessions recused himself, Evelyn Farkas, a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, detailed efforts at hampering the newly installed Trump administration during a March 2, 2017 interview with MSNBC, in which she described how the Obama administration gathered and disseminated intelligence on the Trump team. I was urging my former colleagues and, frankly speaking, the people on the Hill, get as much information as you can, get as much intelligence as you can before President Obama leaves the administration. The Trump folks, if they found out how we knew what we knew about the Trump staff's dealings with Russians, they would try to compromise those sources and methods, meaning we would no longer have access to that intelligence. That's why you have the leaking. Note how Farkas said how we knew, not just what we knew. On Tuesday, March 21, 2017, the chair of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, Devin Nunes, met a classified source who showed him dozens of intelligence reports. Contained within these reports was evidence of surveillance on the Trump campaign. Nunes held a press conference on March 22, highlighting what he had found. I recently confirmed that on numerous occasions, the intelligence community incidentally collected information about US citizens involved in the Trump transition, details about persons associated with the incoming administration, details with little apparent foreign intelligence value were widely disseminated in intelligence community reporting. In a series of rapid-fire questions and answers, Nunes attempted to elaborate on what he had been shown. From what I know right now, it looks like incidental collection. We don't know exactly how that was picked up, but we're trying to get to the bottom of it. I think the NSA's going to comply. I am concerned we don't know whether or not the FBI is going to comply. I have placed a call. I'm waiting to talk to Director Comey, hopefully later today. I have seen intelligence reports that clearly show the president-elect and his team were at least monitored and disseminated out in intelligence in what appears to be raw, well, I shouldn't say raw, but intelligence reporting channels. It looks to me like it was all legally collected, but it was essentially a lot of information on the president-elect and his transition team and what they were doing. The documents Nunes had been shown highlighted the unmasking activities of the FBI, the Obama administration, and CIA Director Brennan in relation to the Trump campaign. Although March 2017 would prove chaotic, the Trump administration had survived the first crucial months and now began to slowly assert its authority. On May 3rd, FBI Director James Comey testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Under oath, Comey stated that his agency and the FBI's investigation had not been pressured by the Trump administration. Senator Hirono, so if the Attorney General or senior officials at the Department of Justice opposes a specific investigation, can they halt that FBI investigation? Comey, in theory, yes. Hirono, has it happened? Comey, not in my experience, because it would be a big deal to tell the FBI to stop doing something that, without an appropriate purpose, I mean where oftentimes they give us opinions that we don't see a case there, and so you ought to stop investing resources in it. But I'm talking about a situation where we were told to stop something for a political reason. That would be a very big deal. It's not happened in my experience. Less than a week later, on May 9th, President Trump fired Comey based on a May 8th recommendation by Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein. Rosenstein would later tell members of Congress, "In one of my first meetings with then-Senator Jeff Sessions last winter, we discussed the need for new leadership at the FBI. Among the concerns that I recall were to restore the credibility of the FBI, respect the established authority of the Department of Justice, limit public statements, and eliminate leaks." Regarding the recommendation, Rosenstein said, "I wrote it, I believe it, I stand by it." Within days of Trump's firing of Comey, the FBI, now under the leadership of acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe, suddenly decided to re-establish direct contact with Christopher Steele through DOJ official Bruce Orr. The re-engagement attempt came 6 months after Steele had been formally terminated by the FBI on November 1st, 2016. The FBI's re-engagement of Orr was highlighted during a congressional review of some text messages between Orr and Steele. Or, the FBI had asked me a few days before, when I reported to them my latest conversation with Chris Steele, they had, would he, next time you talk with him, could you ask him if he would be willing to meet again? Jordan, so this is the re-engagement, or yes. The texts being referenced were sent on May 15, 2017 and refer to a request that all received from the FBI to ask Steele to re-engage with the FBI in the days after Comey had been fired on May 9th. This was the only time the FBI used or to reach out to Steele. 2 days after Comey was fired on May 11, 2017, McCabe testified before the Senate Intelligence Committee. While the hearing's original intent had been to focus on national security threats, Trump's firing of Comey completely altered the topic of the hearing. McCabe, who agreed that he would notify the committee of any efforts to interfere with the FBI's ongoing investigation into links between Russia and the Trump campaign, told members of Congress that there had been no effort to impede our investigation to date. In other words, McCabe testified that he was unaware of any evidence of obstruction from Trump or his administration. Notably, Comey's May 3rd testimony may have left McCabe with little choice other than to confirm there had been no obstruction. McCabe, however, failed to inform the committee that he was actively considering opening an obstruction of justice probe into Trump, a path he would initiate in a meeting with Rosenstein just 5 days later. On the morning of May 16, 2017, Rosenstein allegedly suggested to McCabe that he could secretly record Trump. It was at this meeting that McCabe was pushing for the Justice Department to open an investigation into the president, according to witness accounts reported by the Washington Post. In addition to McCabe, Rosenstein, and special counsel to McCabe, Lisa Page, there were one or two others present, including Rosenstein's chief of staff, James Crowley, and possibly Scott Schools, the senior-most career attorney at the DOJ and a top aide to Rosenstein. An unnamed participant at the meeting, in comments to the Washington Post, framed the conversation between McCabe and Rosenstein in an entirely different light, noting that Rosenstein had responded with angry sarcasm to McCabe, saying, "What do you want to do, Andy? Wire the president?" It was just 5 days earlier that McCabe publicly testified that there was no obstruction on the part of the Trump administration. Sometime later that same day, both Rosenstein and Trump met with former FBI Director Robert Mueller in the Oval Office. The meeting was reported as being for the FBI Director position, but the idea that Mueller would be considered for the FBI Director role seems highly unlikely. Mueller had previously served as the FBI Director from 2001 to 2013, 2 years beyond the normal 10-year tenure for an FBI Director. In 2011, Obama requested that Mueller stay on as FBI Director for an additional 2 years, which required special congressional approval. Rosenstein appointed Mueller as special counsel the following day on May 17, 2017, and in doing so, Rosenstein removed control of the Trump-Russia investigation from McCabe and put it in the hands of Mueller. This was confirmed in a recent statement by a DOJ spokesperson who said the Deputy Attorney General in fact appointed Special Counsel Robert Mueller and directed that McCabe be removed from any participation in that investigation. Following the appointment of Mueller as special counsel, it also appears the FBI's efforts to re-engage with Steele abruptly ended. We know the FBI hadn't found any evidence of collusion in the May 2017 timeframe. When McCabe was attempting to open an obstruction investigation, FBI agent Peter Strzok, who played a key role in the counterintelligence investigation of the Trump campaign, texted FBI lawyer Lisa Page about lacking evidence of collusion. "You and I both know the odds are nothing. If I thought it was likely, I'd be there, no question. I hesitate in part because of my gut sense and concern there's no big there." Page, who was asked about this text during her July 2018 testimony, said, "I think this presents that, even as far as May of 2017, we still couldn't answer the question." FBI General Counsel James Baker, who was questioned about the Strzok text, was then asked if he'd seen any evidence to the contrary. He stumbled a bit in his reply. "Meadows, do you have any evidence to the contrary that you observed personally in your official capacity?" Baker: "So the difficulty I'm having with your question is, what does collusion mean and what does prove mean? And so I don't know how to respond to that." In his testimony, Baker disclosed the actual substance of the discussions taking place at the upper echelons of the FBI immediately following Comey's firing, that Vladimir Putin had ordered President Trump to fire Comey. Baker. We discussed, so to the best of my recollection, with the same people I described earlier, Mr. McCabe, possibly Mr. Gattis, Carl Gattis, Executive Assistant Director of the National Security Branch, Mr. Priestat, possibly Lisa Page, possibly Pete Strzok. I don't remember that specifically. Ratcliffe. So there was a discussion between those folks, possibly all of the folks that you've identified, about whether or not President Trump had been ordered to fire Jim Comey by the Russian government. Baker, I wouldn't say ordered, I guess. I would say the words I sort of used earlier, acting at the behest of and somehow following directions, somehow executing their will, whether and so literally, an order or not, I don't know, but Ratcliffe, and so Baker, it was discussed as a theoretical possibility. Ratcliffe, when was it discussed? Baker, after the firing, like in the aftermath of the firing. The FBI, with no actual evidence of collusion after 10 months of investigating, began discussing a complete hypothetical at the highest levels of leadership as a means to possibly open an obstruction of justice investigation of the President of the United States. McCabe was later fired for lying to the DOJ Inspector General and is currently the subject of a criminal grand jury investigation. Despite the ongoing assault from the intelligence community and holdovers from the Obama administration, President Trump was not entirely without allies. Dana Bente, one of the nation's highest-profile federal prosecutors, served in a series of critical shifting roles within the Trump administration. Bente, who remained the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia until early 2018, concurrently became the Acting Attorney General, following the firing of then Acting Attorney General Sally Yates. Bente, who was specifically appointed by Trump, was not directly in the line of succession that had been previously laid out under an unusual executive order from the Obama administration. Upon the confirmation of Jeff Sessions as Attorney General, Bente next served as Acting Deputy Attorney General until the confirmation of Rod Rosenstein as Deputy Attorney General on April 25, 2017. Bente then became the acting head of the DOJ's National Security Division on April 28, 2017, following the sudden resignation of Mary McCord. Bente was appointed as FBI General Counsel on January 23, 2018, replacing James Baker, who was demoted and reassigned. Baker is currently the subject of a criminal leak investigation. Bente remains in his position as FBI General Counsel. On March 31, 2017, the Trump administration asked for the resignations of all 46 holdover U.S. attorneys from the Obama administration. Trump refused to accept the resignations of just 3 of them, Bente, Rosenstein, and John Huber. As former Attorney General Jeff Sessions noted in a March 29, 2018 letter to Congressional Chairman Chuck Grassley, Bob Goodlatte and Trey Gowdy, Huber was assigned by Sessions to lead a prosecution team and is currently working with DOJ Inspector General Mike Horowitz. I already have directed senior federal prosecutors to evaluate certain issues previously raised by the committee. Specifically, I asked United States Attorney John W. Huber to lead this effort. The Carter Page FISA application has been the subject of significant media attention. But there's another element to the story that, although largely ignored, is equally important. It involved what amounted to a surreptitious race between NSA Director Admiral Mike Rogers and DOJ National Security Division Head John Carlin. Following the discovery that outside contractors for the FBI were accessing raw FISA data since at least 2015, Rogers directed the NSA Office of Compliance to conduct a fundamental baseline review of compliance associated with 702 at some point in early April 2016. On April 18, 2016, Rogers moved aggressively in response to the disclosures. He abruptly shut down all FBI outside contractor access. At this point, both the FBI and DOJ's NSD became aware of Rogers' compliance review. They may have known earlier, but they were certainly aware after outside contractor access was halted. The DOJ's NSD maintains oversight of the intelligence agency's use of Section 702 authority. The NSD and Office of the Director of National Intelligence jointly conduct reviews of the intelligence agency's Section 702 activities every 60 days. The NSD, with notice to the ODNI, is required to report any incidents of agency non-compliance or misconduct to the FISA court. Instead of issuing individual court orders, Section 702 requires the Attorney General and the Director of National Intelligence (NDI) to provide the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court (FISC) with annual certifications that specify categories of foreign intelligence information the government is authorized to acquire pursuant to Section 702. The Attorney General and the DNI must also certify that intelligence community agencies will follow targeting procedures and minimisation procedures that are approved by the FISC as part of the certification. Carlin filed the government's proposed 2016 Section 702 certifications on September 26, 2016. Carlin knew the general status of the compliance review by Rogers. The NSD was part of the review. Carlin failed to disclose a critical January 7, 2016 report by the Office of the Inspector General and associated FISA abuse to the FISA court in his 2016 certification. Carlin also failed to disclose Rogers' ongoing Section 702 compliance review. On September 27, 2016, the day after he filed the annual certifications, Carlin announced his resignation, which would become effective on October 15, 2016. On October 4, 2016, a standard follow-up court hearing was held with Carlin present. Again, he made no disclosure of FISA abuse or other related issues. This lack of disclosure would be noted by the court later in the April 2017 ruling. The government's failure to disclose those IG and OCO reviews at the October 4, 2016 hearing was ascribed to an institutional lack of candour. On October 15, 2016, Carlin formally left the NSD. On October 20, 2016, Rogers was briefed by the NSA compliance officer on findings from the 702 NSA compliance audit. The audit had uncovered a large number of issues, including numerous About Query violations. Rogers shut down all About Query activity on October 21, 2016. About Queries are particularly worrisome, since they occur when the target is neither the sender nor the recipient of the collected communication, but the target's query, such as an email address, is being passed between two other communicants. On the same day, the DOJ and FBI sought and received a FISA warrant on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page. At this point, the FISA court was still unaware of the Section 702 violations. On October 24, 2016, the government orally apprised the court of significant non-compliance with the NSA's minimisation procedures involving queries of data acquired under Section 702 using US person identifiers. The full scope of non-compliance querying practices has not been previously disclosed to the court. Rogers appeared formally before the FISA court on October 26, 2016, and presented the written findings of his audit. 2 days later, on the day the court otherwise would have had to complete its review of the certifications and procedures, the government made a written submission regarding those compliance problems, and the court held a hearing to address them. The government reported that the NSA, IG, and OCO were conducting other reviews, covering different time periods, with preliminary results suggesting that the problem was widespread during all periods under review. The FISA court was unaware of the FISA query violations until they were presented to the court by then NSA Director Rogers. Carlin didn't disclose his knowledge of FISA abuse in the annual Section 702 certifications, apparently in order to avoid raising suspicions at the FISA court ahead of receiving the Carter Page FISA warrant. The FBI and NSD were literally racing against Rogers' investigation in order to obtain a FISA warrant on Carter Page. Rogers presented his findings directly to the FISA court's presiding judge, Rosemary Collier. Collier and Rogers would work together for the next 6 months, addressing the issues that Roger had uncovered. It was also Collier who wrote the April 26, 2017 FISA court ruling on the entire episode. It was also Collier who signed the original FISA warrant on Carter Page on October 21, 2016. The litany of abuses described in the April 26, 2017 ruling was shocking and detailed the use of private contractors by the FBI in relation to Section 702 data. Judge Collier referred to it as a very serious Fourth Amendment issue. The FBI was specifically singled out by the FISC numerous times in the ruling. The improper access previously afforded the contractors has been discontinued. The court is nonetheless concerned about the FBI's apparent disregard of minimisation rules and whether the FBI may be engaging in similar disclosures of raw Section 702 information that had not been reported. Rogers informed Collier of the ongoing Pfizer abuses by the FBI and NSD just 3 days after she personally signed the counterpage Pfizer warrant. Virtually every FBI and NSD official with material involvement in the original counterpage Pfizer application would later be removed, either through firing or resignation. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode of Declassified, and a special thanks to Jeff Carlson, who has pulled together the facts for this story. Please leave your comments below. What do you think about Spygate and all the players involved? I'd be very interested to hear them. From all of us here at Declassified, thank you for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.